White supremacy is often understood as a social and political ideology that promotes the belief that white people are superior to those of other racial backgrounds. This belief system can be viewed through a psychological lens, as it reflects a deep-seated psychological illness that has been perpetuated through generations. The roots of this mindset can be traced back to historical contexts where colonialism, slavery, and systemic racism were prevalent, embedding a sense of superiority among white Europeans. The psychological illness of white supremacy can be seen as a collective trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. The forefathers of those who espouse these beliefs created narratives that painted non-white individuals as inferior, using pseudoscientific arguments and cultural stereotypes. This indoctrination was not merely a result of conscious choice, but was embedded in the social fabric through institutions such as education, religion, and media. These narratives have been programmed into the psyche of many white individuals, creating a sense of entitlement and superiority that manifests as a disease of the mind. Verbal means, media propaganda, and social aliases have been instrumental in perpetuating this ideology. Language itself can be a powerful tool for shaping perceptions and beliefs. The use of derogatory terms, coded language, and exclusionary practices reinforces an us versus them mentality. Media representations often reinforce stereotypes, creating a feedback loop where individuals are continuously exposed to biased narratives that affirm their preconceived notions of racial hierarchy. The fallacy underlying white supremacy lies in the belief that racial differences equate to superiority. This notion is fundamentally flawed, as it disregards the shared humanity and equal potential of all individuals, regardless of their racial or ethnic backgrounds. By promoting division and hostility, white supremacy undermines the harmony of humanity. It creates barriers that prevent collective progress and understanding, fostering environments of discrimination and violence. Moreover, the psychological impact of this ideology extends beyond those who subscribe to it. It harms individuals and communities who are subjected to systemic racism and discrimination, leading to a cycle of trauma and conflict. The perpetuation of white supremacy not only isolates individuals within their own racial group, but also fosters a society that is fragmented and devoid of empathy. In conclusion, the psychological illness of white supremacy is a complex interplay of historical indoctrination, social conditioning, and systemic reinforcement. It thrives on division and fosters a false sense of superiority that ultimately harms all of humanity. Recognizing and addressing this psychological disease is essential for fostering a more inclusive and harmonious society. The psychological illness of white supremacy is rooted in historical, socio-cultural, and psychological dynamics that have evolved over centuries. To further understand this concept, it's important to delve into how these elements interact and the implications they have for individuals and society. Historical context. The origins of white supremacy can be traced back to the colonial era when European powers expanded their empires, often at the expense of indigenous populations. This expansion was justified through a belief in racial superiority, where Europeans viewed themselves as civilized and superior to the savages they encountered. This mindset not only rationalized the subjugation of other races, but also instilled a deep sense of entitlement among white Europeans, creating a legacy of racial hierarchies that persists today. Psychological conditioning. Psychologically, individuals are often influenced by their environments and the conditioning received through families. Schools and media plays a significant role in shaping beliefs. Children raised in environments that promote racial stereotypes or who are exposed to negative portrayals of other races may internalize these views, leading to an unconscious bias that manifests as prejudice and discrimination in adulthood. This conditioning can be so pervasive that it becomes part of an individual's identity, making it difficult for them to recognize their biases or challenge their beliefs. Social reinforcement. Social media and modern communication platforms have amplified the spread of white supremacist ideology. Online communities can create echo chambers where individuals reinforce each other's beliefs, often leading to radicalization. The anonymity provided by the internet allows for the proliferation of hate speech and racist ideologies without accountability, further entrenching these harmful beliefs within certain groups. The fallacy of superiority. The belief in racial superiority is fundamentally flawed. It is based on misconceptions about intelligence, culture, and capabilities that have been debunked by scientific research. Genetic studies have shown that there is more variability within racial groups than between them, undermining the very notion of racial superiority.
White supremacy, as a social construct, embodies a profound logical illness rooted in its inherent contradictions and reliance on arbitrary, rather than rational, distinctions. At its core, it asserts a hierarchy of human value based on the spurious concept of race, with whiteness at the apex. This foundational premise is itself logically flawed. Biology discredits the notion of distinct human races, revealing a spectrum of genetic variation that renders any strict racial categorization meaningless. Therefore, building an entire social, political, and economic system upon such a non-existent biological reality is akin to constructing a skyscraper on quicksand, inherently unstable and destined for collapse, or at least requiring immense sustained effort to maintain its precarious position. Furthermore, white supremacy demands a constant, circular logic to sustain itself. It defines whiteness, not by objective criteria, but often by what it is not, non-white, or by an ever-shifting set of cultural norms and phenotypic markers. This fluidity creates an internal inconsistency where the very category it seeks to elevate is undefinable in a fixed, logical sense. To maintain its dominance, it must simultaneously claim a universal standard of civilization while simultaneously denying that standard to those it deems other. For instance, it champions meritocracy while actively erecting barriers to opportunity for non-white individuals, demonstrating a hypocritical application of its own professed values. The psychological toll of this logical illness is immense, both on those it oppresses and those who internalize its tenets. For the oppressed, it necessitates a constant negotiation with a system that denies their humanity and rationalizes their subjugation. For those who benefit from it, it often requires a deliberate blindness to its inconsistencies, leading to cognitive dissonance and the need to rationalize egregious injustices. This rationalization often manifests as victim blaming, the invention of cultural deficiencies, or the dismissal of historical atrocities, all of which are logically unsound attempts to uphold a morally indefensible system. Ultimately, the logical illness of white supremacy lies in its construction of an elaborate, self-serving fantasy that, when subjected to critical examination, crumbles under the weight of its own irrationality and moral bankruptcy.